meeting. And I know firsthand from being involved with that, all of the tremendous work that has been done by small businesses and the participants. And I will tell you, I am so proud. We are navigating these circumstances quite well. We are stable and we have a lot of positive momentum. I know many of us are out and about, shopping local, dining local, all in very safe ways, which is really important. So this morning, we have all three county commissioners here with us, and they are going to fill us in on everything from how the coronavirus is affecting our region to what the county is doing to help our businesses. Before we go any further, I'd like to recognize this morning's sponsors. Representing Comcast is Janet Steiner, Senior Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs. Janet, would you share some thoughts with us this morning?
Sure, as soon as I can get myself off mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Technology. As always, thrilled to be here. We love what this chamber is doing in the business community to keep everybody connected and moving through this crazy time we're all experiencing. Just to give a heads up, one of the ways Comcast is attempting to help people get through this is through our Internet Essentials program for low-income families. As everybody knows, during these virtual learning experiences, low-income families are extremely adversely affected, especially if they don't have internet connections in the home. So Internet Essentials is one way that we can help keep them connected and in school and learning virtually. We have a partner program that enables organizations to sponsor. Sometimes it's school districts, sometimes it's nonprofits. We're working with a variety of organizations to help a variety, not just school students. We're working on a pilot with Bristol Township and the Area Agency on Aging to help keep seniors connected via the internet in their homes, because we know that, you know, with all of the health concerns and whatnot, you know, it can be a very isolating time for them as well. So we're very excited. If you have any questions about either of these programs, please feel free to reach out to Brian or me. And I would be remiss, and Brad would probably kill me if I didn't do a shameless plug for Buck Beaver Film Fest, which is coming soon. It's going to be virtual this year, so certainly try to join us. We've just chosen our slate of winners, and they're phenomenal as always. And you'll be able to catch some of the highlights on Comcast On Demand Get Local in the coming weeks. So we hope you'll join us for that.
Very good. Thank you, Janet. I also want to thank additional sponsors, the Lomax Companies and Independence Blue Cross. Thomas, I know you're with us this morning. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. I just want to start by thanking Val, Amanda, Brad, and the wonderful group they have at the Chamber for hosting such an important event. And additionally, I want to thank the commissioners, Commissioner Marseglia, Commissioner Harvick, and Commissioner DiGirolamo for taking the time out of their busy schedules to come and join this esteemed group. And Commissioner Marseglia, a beautiful dog you have there. I have one that looks just like it.
So do I.
So, but I just want to say thanks to everybody for taking the time out and joining us this morning. And I'm looking forward to hear what our commissioners have to say.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, so here's how the program this morning is going to work. We will let each of the commissioners speak. At the end of that part of the program, we will go over questions that you can submit by clicking on chat. So feel free to do that anytime during the program. Click on chat, type your question. Amanda will be managing that process, and we'll get to that discussion after the three commissioners have the opportunity to speak. Also, because as you know, the Chamber really stands for connecting and networking together. Unfortunately, we are not in a room eating eggs and bacon this morning. So also feel free to share your contact information via the chat. Just type it in there and we'll be sure to share that information afterwards so you can see everyone who participated this morning and possibly connect on a number of topics after this event. So let's get started. Speaking first this morning is Diane Ellis Marseglia, who serves as chair of the Bucks County Commissioners. Diane, thank you for being here and being willing to participate in this new format.
Thank you very much. Okay to go?
You okay to go?
First thing, I'll give you a piece of trivia. Bambi will go away, but Bambi's dog, my dog Bambi, and Vale's dog are related. So there's, you know.
They're cousins.
There's always a connection out there. It's an honor to be here today, and I almost laughed when you just said chair because I'm sort of used to going last and waiting for the other two commissioners to go. So this is a little bit different. I want to welcome my colleagues, Commissioner Harvey and Commissioner DiGirolamo. It's interesting. Usually we'd be in a panel next to each other, but now you're right in front of me, so I can see you're there. We are each going to speak, and we each have different topics. So it's similar to the state of the counties in the past. I don't want to necessarily launch into COVID because I think what has happened with COVID is it will probably weave itself into everything that we each need to talk about. But I will start off by, you know, I want to acknowledge that, you know, as we learned last night that this has reached the White House, it can reach any of our houses. As a matter of fact, COVID within our county, the biggest piece of infection is within families. So when we look at our statistics every day, that's where it is spreading. So everyone needs to be careful, to be mindful. What I am learning is people are starting to think that they are safe in their pods, whether it's their pod at work or their pod at home or their small group of friends, but it can reach you anywhere and everybody goes to all kinds of places. So the best thing we can do is mask up. Dr. Damsker tells us all the time, if most of us wear a mask, most of the time we can beat this. So moving on, I'll start with a couple light things just to talk to you about. One thing is that I'm happy to announce that at our, I guess it was our last two commissioners meetings ago, we entered into a contract with the African American Museum, and they will be leasing space from the county in a property on Court Creek Park. I like to share about this because when I first became a commissioner, I looked at this old building and thought, wow, how can we just let this sit here on, you know, this, it's right on 413 by St. Mary. And when I talked to our Park and Rec director, Bill Mitchell, he let me know that Mike Fitzpatrick had been very interested in making that, that project, somehow developing it, and he was never able to do it. So here, you know, 12 years later, it's finally become an opportunity. And parts of that building date back to 1716. There are some people who believe it was on the Underground Railroad, but we do know that as there was a migration from the south north, that many African-American residents lived in Bristol and Langhorne, but went to the Boone Farm, which is the name of the property, where they worked. So we will now be rehabilitating this building. As I said, parts of it go back to 1716. The three of us went there and it is old and dusty, but magnificent. So, you know, we're very excited to be able to help the African American Museum move from a mobile museum, which has really been difficult for them during COVID because they can't go to schools or programs, into their own place. So we're hoping that this will be open by next summer. It's going to take a little while though to fix things there. So that's one big thing. Another thing, you know, we've gotten a lot of emails between the three of us hoping that we will do something to make sure that there is diversity awareness within this county, that there are police and community interactions that are always positive. And we are blessed that that generally has been a positive thing in Bucks County. But we learned that District Attorney Weintraub was involved in a project called Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And so what the district attorney has been doing, and I can't see everybody, but I'm wondering if any of you have been part of this program. And if you haven't, I strongly recommend that Central Bucks Chamber take this on as a project. What the idea is that everyone joins together and watches a movie, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours, called Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. After that movie, which is very difficult to watch in the beginning, but has a lot of hope in it as the movie goes on, You generally break into groups of 10, and there's usually a facilitator and a police officer in each group. And you talk about the community and what we can do to have better relationships. And it doesn't have to just be about law enforcement. So we are also going to purchase some books so that we may be able to donate them within the community as well as to our staff. But for us, we are going to start in about 2 or 3 weeks, making sure that each of our staff has an opportunity to watch this, and they will be able to do it during their work hours. We are contracting with the Peace Center to come in, and it will all be done virtually, but they will break our staff into groups of 10 after they've watched the film, and they will talk. And so we're hoping to get this done by the end of this year, by the end of 2020. We think it's a great educational opportunity, and in following with District Attorney Weintraub, who's taken it to each community and each police force and trying to get in each school, we will take it to 2,400 employees. So I'm hoping that you might join us and try to consider doing some of that. We are also having this Sunday, if you are near Warminster Park, you've probably heard me talk about our suicide task force. We are partnering with NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and we are having a drive-through mental health and suicide awareness and prevention walk. It is called Hope Is Not Canceled. So you can go online, NAMI has the website there, and make donations, but even if you can't, we're encouraging people to decorate your car. I'm going to be decorating my car in positive, playful things and drive through the park. The radio, you'll be able to turn your radio on when you get to the park and hear Commissioner Harvey will talk, Commissioner DiGirolamo, there will be survivors there talking. So I encourage you to be a part of that. So those are some of the kind of interesting things that are going on in the county. I should tell you that you've been hearing Commissioner Lockery for years talk about the building of the courthouse and then the rebuilding of the current administration building. Well, we're just about done, and we've got, I think, all of the departments in now. We're taking a look around to see if there's going to be room to move any of our other departments that are in the Alms House building in. But our biggest move was children and youth. That's over 200 employees that moved from their off-campus office building in Furlong into the county, I guess about a month or so ago. So it's really changed the dynamics there. For a while, there was, not very many of us since everybody went over to the courthouse. And now we have the Area Agency on Aging in the building, children and youth in the building, mental health and drug and alcohol is all with us, consumer protection. So it's really creating kind of a terrific atmosphere for the different departments to be able to interact with each other, because sometimes when somebody comes to the county, they don't need to just deal with one department. So speaking of departments, I thought that I might talk to you a little bit about mental health and the jail, and I'll talk about them sort of together because they run into each other. As COVID hit, many of you saw articles probably in the newspaper that we were struggling even more than we usually do with people who are mentally ill, seriously mentally ill in the community, not being able to get the help that they need in hospitals and having to be transported to our jail. It became even more confounding because typically when you are in our jail, that allows you to access Norristown State Hospital. But Norristown State Hospital was so overcome with COVID that they stopped taking anyone, which made everybody with any of those mental health issues have to stay even longer in our jail. That's never a good thing for someone with a mental illness to be in the jail. They may be safe, but often their condition deteriorates because we are not a mental hospital. But this has pointed out a lot of problems just that we need to try to deal with, not just within county government, but across this country. We have a lot of hospitals out there, but they are kind of selective about sometimes who they will take in. So the more aggressive, seriously and persistently mentally ill people don't easily find a bed in our local hospitals. And so they end up sitting sometimes for days, and sometimes we've had people in the summer for 6 weeks sit in an emergency room and unable to find a bed. Now, those of us who are, I'm almost 60, so I can think back to when we had, hospitals available. Byberry was available. Norristown was a fully functioning hospital. There were a lot of bad parts to that. People got stuck in hospitals. They didn't always get good treatment, but now we have nothing to offer them. So this has been a huge effort for us to try to figure out what to do. And it's particularly hard, as I said, with COVID. So one of the things that we are planning to do in the next few months is to try to take a building that we have and try to rehab it within the jail system. and rehab it into a hospital that can handle 4 to 6 seriously mentally ill people, so that they could come right there from a district justice office or come right there from a hospital, rather than have to go to the jail in order to get into Norristown. And we would try to provide some pretty acute treatment right there. The second thing we're doing is we're working with Judge Bateman, the president judge, as well as with Judge Boylan, who will be assigned to mental health court, to establish a mental health court. One of the holdups is that we need to be able to have a facility where we could place someone temporarily if they went before the judge and they were a danger to themselves or others. The idea would be to avoid jail. So that's why getting that building in shape that we can have a few beds the judge would have access to if someone needs it's important. But the overall idea of mental health court would be that someone who is deteriorating or who the police find is causing a problem in the community or who comes in front of a district justice would be held accountable by the judge. They would come in front of the judge and the judge would be saying, I'm going to see you every week or twice a week. During that time, you'll have a probation officer and a therapist and a psychiatrist, and I'll be checking with you to make sure you're following up on your appointments, that you're taking your medication. You don't need to go to jail then, right? The judge can keep an eye. We can deliver community supports right in that person's home or help them to get a home, which is another problem with mental illness. So, we are working on all of that. I watched successfully that we had, I think it was between 6 and 10 people encamped, homeless with substance abuse and mental health problems in our Lower Bucks County offices. They were outside. And over the course of 2 months, they were able to find everybody a place to stay and either mental health help or substance abuse help. So we can do it. It's a matter of finding places that will take them and finding, making sure the system all works together, which it did. And that's one of the positives of COVID, is that we were all forced to work together, and we found that we really could solve problems quicker when we were all on the same page. It probably didn't hurt that the county's all in one building now as well. So I will also just say very quickly about the jail. We did a terrific job of getting people who could have been at risk for COVID but were low-level offenders out of the jail during the months of March to June. And the judges and district attorney and public defenders, everybody worked hard to make sure the community was protected, but people were able to be released. And then we were able to do social distancing within the jail to keep our officers and the other inmates safe. So that worked well for a while. What we are seeing now is a number of people coming into the jail with substance abuse problems far worse than they were earlier in the year, particularly alcohol problems. We are seeing people who've had to be hospitalized because of the detox effects that we haven't seen in a long time. Unfortunately, that's probably an effect of COVID. The other thing we're struggling with today, I'm hoping we have a little good news on in the next few weeks, is the state prison system is having such problems with COVID that they have stopped taking sentenced inmates from us. So that's creating a backup. So we have like 30 or so inmates that should be switched to the state. Because that hasn't happened, we are worrying that we're not going to be able to social distance as well in the next few weeks if this continues. So we're hoping to break through that wall and get the state to start accepting sentenced inmates again. So I'm hoping I covered enough of my stuff that I can pass this on to Commissioner Harvey, but I will stay on. We all will, and we'll do questions on anything you all have afterwards. So,
Very good.
Commissioner Harvey, it is my honor to introduce you for your first State of the County events.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't sure if Jean was going to also jump in on the introduction or not.
I'm ready for you to go. Thanks.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting me, take a little bit of your time, and thank you for joining in on this State of the County to learn a little bit about what's happening in Bucks, and certainly interested in hearing any questions you have and doing our best to answer them. Certainly probably the most common question or comment I get, I got it last night from one of my neighbors as I was walking my dog, was, boy, you picked the right year to run for county commissioner, didn't you? So, I'm sure Jean and I have both kind of heard that, over the last 9 months or so. But it is, the team that we're working with, the three of us working together, has been really just an incredibly smooth process. It's been, I think, better than I could have I've hoped in terms of just the collaboration and the respect we have for each other, and it makes you wonder why we can't do something like this in Harrisburg and Washington, D.C. and lots of other places around the country. Because there are far more things that we have in common than the things that where we find ourselves on different sides. And that's probably true for everybody on this call, regardless of your background, party, whatever. So one of the things I'm going to talk about, and Jean had alluded to this earlier, is economic development, the economic task force, and what the county has been doing or trying to do very hard since really since the pandemic started. We obviously knew very early that the pandemic was going to have an impact on the economic situation here in Bucks County, as it has across the country. We had a conference call pretty early with our different economic development leaders, including Paul Benzavengo, who's on this call, really just trying to get a feel. This is probably in late March, maybe early April, get a feel for what was happening, what people were thinking was going to happen. And of course, at that time, nobody really knew what was going to happen. I think all of us sort of assumed that whatever was happening in March was going to be temporary. Schools might be closed for a few weeks, and then kids would go back. Businesses might have to close for a little while, then everybody would go back. Certainly this is unprecedented is a word that we're all probably tired of hearing, but it certainly is true. Nothing like this has happened in the world really for 100 years. And so I kind of remind people, some of the people who email us and ask us, why we're not doing a better job, or ask us, all kinds of other questions, that there isn't anybody alive today, anywhere in the world, who's ever had to govern through anything like this. In any place, any level of government, there really isn't anybody. And so there's no playbook to open up and take a look and say, okay, this is what we do when a massive pandemic hits the globe. And so in many ways, we're writing the book of what to do. One of the things we did want to focus on was economic development recovery. And so we did form the Economic Recovery Task Force, and we immediately reached out to the three chambers. They obviously joined in. Paul was involved. Jean also was involved. We tried to get a good mixture of representatives, a little over a dozen people from different backgrounds, manufacturing, service industries, labor, local government, and we tried to, in my mind, it was an effort to try and gather as much information as we could from the people who were on the ground. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing yourself in your own business? What are you seeing happening to those that you interact with, whether in the business world or personal world? And that information flowing back to the county, gave us a way to approach this and figuring out what we could do. We did create an economic recovery or economic resources portal on our website, which is still there, that has access, or information rather, for you to access PPE. All the state guidelines are updated, county guidelines. We had examples, posters that we made and created here at the county that you could put on the front doors of your windows and businesses. And I was actually at someplace earlier this week where I kind of forgot. I got used to looking for them when I went into businesses, looking to see if they had our poster up. This one had it up. And I was like, oh yeah, I know where that came from. I remember putting that on our website. So and we know it's had some impact. We really wanted to do a lot of outreach, and so we did a lot of town halls, the first town halls the county has ever done, virtual town halls, obviously. We did one for students, specifically for students, back in late spring, so they could ask questions of the commissioners to find out about what was happening. We started doing regular Zoom meetings with all the municipal managers throughout the county, throughout the 54 municipalities, so that they could get the information from the county, and that was happening, every couple of weeks. We had regular calls with them, in addition to contacts with obviously the people that we were employing here, health department, emergency services, with the IU. All of it was about communicating and getting messages out. For the business world, we launched what ended up being about a $15 million grant program, the Bucks Back to Work program. The first round of funding went out in June and July. We had about 900 businesses apply and receive some kind of grant. That grant was capped at no more than $25,000 per business or 25% of your annual revenue, whatever was higher. We did sort of rank businesses. We tried to get as much information as we could to create a sort of an analytical approach to who should be getting what money. There were some businesses that received $5,000 grants. There were some businesses that got $10,000, some that got 15, some that got 25. And you know, I made some calls myself just in terms of letting business owners know they were going to be getting a grant award, knowing that there were a lot of businesses who got $25,000 awards. One of the businesses I reached out to was getting a $5,000 award. And I was a little bit hesitant because I wanted to obviously let them know they were going to get it, that it was processing it. It was literally a check was in the mail. And I was a little bit concerned that they were going to be upset that they weren't getting more. And it was interesting to hear the person how happy they were that they were getting a $5,000 grant and how this was really going to be helpful to them. And we did decide to tier the rewards based on things like number of employees that a business might have had, the cash they had on hand, if they had received other aid, whether it was PPP or EIDL or some other kind of funding, and all of that played into our role to try and help the businesses who really needed it, and especially businesses who may be kind of at the end of their rope in many ways, or might have a lot of employees, and so to them they needed $25,000. What we have just wrapped up, in fact, I'm having a conference call later today to finalize, is the second round of that funding. We allocated another $15 million to a second grant. The first grant was for businesses no larger than $700,000 in revenue a year, and you had to have 49 employees or less because we want to make it small businesses. We also did restricted that first round of funding. We did not allow any businesses that were franchises to apply. And that was something we really saw happening as we were looking at other programs being launched. Chester County had launched one a few weeks before. We were looking at a grant program in Austin, Texas that was pretty well designed. And we were basically just sort of being scavengers and copying from different people, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And there was that kind of restriction on franchises. And we did get some emails from business owners and that were concerned about that because they were technically a franchise, but they really didn't get any financial support from the parent company. And so that's sometimes, I guess, the misconception I think we may have had, that we kind of assume that if you're part of a franchise, that the parent company can funnel some resources your way. This round of funding that we just completed was for businesses that went up to $2 million in revenue, still 49 or fewer employees. And we did allow for people who were in franchises to apply. So we got about 400 businesses who applied. We're kind of in the process of, doing some analysis, going through their applications. We are reaching out to businesses that may have, had some kind of, a typo when they put in the information online. I know we had one business that, because we allowed businesses to ask how much they wanted. We didn't put any limits on this. You could ask for as much as you wanted to ask for. And we did have some businesses that applied for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But we did have one company that I think applied for $15. And we think that's a mistake. we think maybe they wanted to say 1,500 or 15,000. So, we definitely want to reach out to them to make sure that we try to meet whatever need they have. But that's an effort that's ongoing. It's been happening all week. Staff here at the county contacting these businesses, going through the applications, making sure that everything's in order, and any problems we're highlighting and reaching out personally to those businesses to say, look, we found this, we found that. This one form you uploaded wasn't the one we're looking for. Can you give us another one? We don't want to shut anybody out. That's not what this is about. We really want to do as much help as we can. So that process is ongoing. We're hoping to have awards and checks in the mail the next week or two to those businesses. And we are still discussing, other things we might be able to do. We have to have CARES money because that's what we're using. That money has to be spent by December 30th, which of course is coming up pretty quickly. And we don't yet know if there's a second round of COVID where things start to spike. What impact will that have on our hospitals? What impact will that have on nursing homes and first responders, et cetera? So we certainly know we have to keep some money in reserve to use if we need. But we're still conscious of trying to deliver as much help as we can. We did also provide quite a lot of help, millions of dollars, to a lot of our nonprofits who are working with the homeless or working with the needy in some way, shape, or form, so that they could, in some cases, they needed to retrofit their buildings. They needed to adapt the way they deliver their services because of COVID. So that money was going to help them. In many cases, of course, because of the economic impact of COVID, there's a greater need for what they're doing. And so it was designed to help them with that too. And the final thing I'll just touch on before I turn it over to Commissioner DiGirolamo is another aspect of coming in as sort of a new administration was we did create a transition committee back in December and January. And that committee was made up of about 75 volunteers throughout the county. And they were broken into 7 groups based on their expertise and the areas that we felt needed some focus. And they reviewed those areas of county life, county government, county issues. So we had, for example, a budget and finance subcommittee. We had a subcommittee on human services. We had a subcommittee on parks and facilities. And we had a subcommittee on economic development. And I saw Bill McGlynn, I think, on here somewhere. He was on that committee. There's probably some others who I'm missing. But their job was to really take a look at what was going on in the county and make recommendations. And I think it's important to understand we gave no parameters to any of these groups. We didn't tell them what we were looking for. We didn't tell them where to focus. We didn't tell them things to stay away from. We basically said, sky's the limit. No question is too small. No idea is too large. No proposals too outlandish. What do you think the county needs to do better? What are we doing well? How can we get better? And all those committees reported to us sort of the May, June time period. And it was put into a transition report. It's about 150 pages. It is online, it's posted on the website. You feel free to take a look at it. And a lot of what's recommended in the economic development portion of it is really taking a look at how the county does that business, because it does seem fractured in many ways, that we have different economic agencies and we don't have a whole lot of cohesiveness maybe in the way it's going, and it does cause some confusion. I know from as I was a local elected official that I was often confused as to what county agency was handling what kind of loan process or grants, or one agency would bring a business to us and say this is a business that wants to open up in Falls Township, and then we wouldn't hear from them again, and we didn't even know necessarily who they were, and so that's something we are looking at. The Workforce Development Board, which was its own agency, has been brought into the county. That was a recommendation of the Transition Committee. So Billy Barnes, who's the head of the Workforce Development agency now, is a county employee. And so that's giving us a little bit more of a focused approach on how we can reach out. And since I mentioned that, and I have you now as captive audiences, the Workforce Development Board actually does have some vacancies. And it is a board that meets several times a year. And the idea is that by bringing people of different backgrounds together, different expertise, we can help develop a workforce here in Bucks County that's focused on what we need. So what gaps are people finding when they're hiring a new employee? What are some of the things that are being missed? What are some of the skills that aren't there? We're reaching out through the technical schools. I taught at the Lower Bucks Technical School for 19 years. So how can they adjust what they're doing, how the schools in general, and what kind of training can we offer, and how can the county help to develop, working with businesses and with labor and with people in the public, how do we develop a system that creates a labor pool and a workforce that we can marry with what we need. So we are looking for people, and certainly you can reach out directly to me or through Vail or through Gene. people who are involved in small business, especially if it's agricultural based small business, for larger businesses, for advanced manufacturing. We are finding a little bit of a shortage in terms of business owners from a variety of backgrounds, things like real estate, things of that nature. We're looking for a wide variety of people that we can appoint. We actually do have some appointments coming up, but we have some vacancies that we need to fill. And it's a very good board, and there is a time commitment, but it's certainly a very manageable amounts of time. So encourage you to think about that as a way to sort of giving back and helping us. So I don't know if should I give it to Jean to go to Jean, or am I going right to Jean?
Thank you, Bob. Great comments and a great update. Jean DiGirolamo, welcome. You are next on the ticket this morning.
Well, thank you, and thank you, everyone. Good morning. First, good morning. Good to see everybody. And first to all the members of the chambers. I mean, thank you for everything that you do. Our business community here in Bucks County plays a big part in making our beautiful and wonderful county here just a terrific place to live and work and raise your family. So thank you for everything that you do. I mean, where to start? And again, as Bob said, me and Bob took over in January. We were just starting to get around and work with our county government, and making sure we get to see how county government works. Then all of a sudden, the virus hit there in early March. And I had been talking to Vail Garvin back at the end of February, and we had arranged to have a luncheon where she was going to fill me in on everything that the chamber was doing, because I had been an elected official for a long time, but down the lower end of the county, and we had arranged a date to have lunch, and all of a sudden the virus hit. Everything just about shut down, so we had to cancel our luncheon, and we'll have to reschedule that, Vail, for some time in the future.
Thank you.
But it's really good to be with you, and again, once that virus hit, it just turned everybody's world upside down. It really did, and certainly the business community was impacted in a lot of different ways. I think, and as Commissioner Harvey said, the three commissioners, I mean, we have gotten along so really, really well when it has come to governing and trying to manage this pandemic and virus. And I want to thank both of them because they've included me in everything. I mean, we've gotten along good. My years up in Harrisburg, I always said that compromise is not a bad word when it comes to governing. And after the election is over, I think people expect, whether you're Democrat or Republican, that people expect both sides to get along and try to do everything they can to make the lives of the people that they represent better. So we have really been working hard. We've been working very well together. I can assure everybody here on the call that the three of us have been in the office here in Doylestown almost every day through this pandemic, talking on the phone, doing Zoom, having personal meetings when appropriate. I mean, we have really taken this seriously, and we have done everything we can to make sure we manage this. Our Department of Health has done a terrific job. Dr. Damsker has kind of taken the lead, just done a terrific job in trying to manage this. Of course, every one of the deaths are tragic and heartbreaking, and our prayers and thoughts and hearts go out to all the families who have lost loved ones because of this pandemic. But throughout the whole thing, I think we've done a credible job at trying to manage this. Through the months of August and September, I believe, and again, every death is tragic, but I believe we've only had maybe 2 or 3 deaths in the last 2 months, which really says a lot for every county worker and the way the county has handled this coronavirus. So Commissioner Harvey talked a lot about the grant money for the businesses, and I want to thank him for taking the lead on this because he's really done a lot of the hard work on putting both of these grants together. The CARES money that the county got, we were part of that first bill, that federal bill to pass, and we've got $109 million, Bucks County, from that first CARES package that was passed in Washington. And as Commissioner Harvey said, 30 million of that 109 million has gone to the grants for businesses. We have not spent the whole amount. A lot of the other parts of the money have gone to nonprofits, have gone to providers for health and human services, have gone to and is going to go to many of our municipalities that help them out with the impacts because of the coronavirus. So we haven't spent all the money yet. And again, it's got to be spent by December 30th as of right now. But we have tried to help as many groups, organizations, businesses here in Bucks County to manage and help them deal with this coronavirus. So we've been working really, really hard at that. I want to touch on one thing. Commissioner Marseglia talked about the mental health issue and trying to manage that in our prisons and in our community. But there's also been, besides the mental health, a big problem with drug and alcohol and addiction. And again, we have really tried to help our providers out with money and grants to help them provide services for people who need mental health and drug and alcohol treatment. Our county departments here have just done a really heroic job in making sure that people that need help and treatment have been able to get it. We do have county money available for people who do not have insurance, and I think that's really important. And also important, the Medicaid program here in Bucks County, which gives people a health care benefit. Some people call it medical assistance, but that has worked really, really well through the pandemic. And again, that's based on income and how much money you make. So a lot of people have been able to get treatment for mental health, for drug and alcohol, and for other problems with disabilities and senior citizens as well through the Medicaid program that we run here, the county runs here in Bucks County. So I think we've done a pretty good job with that as well. And just in closing, I know there's been a lot of focus on the election, and you know, the county has a responsibility of our Board of Election of running the election here in Bucks County. And boy, that's taken up an awful lot of our time. Commissioner Harvey is chairman of the Board of Elections. The 3 commissioners make up the Board of Elections, but our Board of Election, under the direction of Tom Freitag and also Gail Humphrey, who was our chief clerk, they have just done, again, a heroic job in trying to manage the election process here in Bucks County. As you all know, we not only have the new voting machines this year, but we also have the new mail-in voting. And because of the pandemic, and who knew this was coming when the law was passed, but because of the pandemic, it looks like an awful lot of people are choosing to vote by mail. So that's been a real struggle for us to try to manage it. We're looking at probably 200 to 250,000 people that are going to vote by mail here in Bucks County. And I think that's a good thing. And I want to assure everybody that they can feel safe and secure if they're going to use mail-in voting or absentee voting. I also want to assure everybody that they can feel safe and secure on election day at the polls. We are doing everything we can to make sure it's safe, masking, sanitizing. We're doing everything we possibly can do to make the polls safe. So whatever way you choose to vote, please feel safe and secure. I want to close with one thing which we need help with, and that we need it from up in Harrisburg. Because right now, the way the law is written for voting, the mail-in votes and absentee votes cannot be started to opening the envelopes and starting to scan the ballots till Election Day. And if that stays the same, if the legislature and the governor does not give us more time before Election Day to open the envelopes, takes the ballots out, and scan the ballots, we are not going to be able to count all those ballots on Election Day. It's just going to be too many, and it's not just going to be Bucks County, but it's going to be many other counties in Pennsylvania, especially the larger counties with a big population. So yesterday, me and the other two commissioners wrote a letter to Governor Wolf and the Republican and Democratic leaders in the House and the Senate, and encouraged them to pass legislation to at least give us 3, 5, even 7 days before Election Day to start opening the ballots and taking the ballots out and scanning. We do not want to count because counting will only begin after the polls close on election night. But if we're going to get results out to everybody on election night by 9, 10, 11 o'clock, we're going to need that extra time to prepare them ballots to be counted. So that's the one thing that we do. We need the legislature to help us with. My understanding is they're talking about it up in Harrisburg, but that is really, really important. And again, this is not an advantage to one side or the other side, Democrat or Republican. This is not a security or safety issue. We will not be counting the ballots. We'll just be opening the envelopes. And to remind everybody, there's just not one envelope, there's 2 envelopes with the mailing balloting and the absentee. There's the outside envelope and a security envelope inside. So that's where we're at with the election. We feel pretty good about where Bucks County is. I know we've been working really, really hard on it. I mean, we've got people working at night coming in and doing the applications. I think the mail-in ballots are ready to go out. Probably maybe today or early next week, they're going to start to be mailed out. So people should start having them in their homes. And I just would suggest to everybody that as soon they get them, please send them back as quickly as possible because we don't want to be backed up against the deadline on Election Day for them to be received. So with that, I guess we're going to open it up for questions. But again, very much appreciate the opportunity to join you here this morning.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you very much. Vale and Amanda, do we have questions submitted from any of the participants?
The questions that were submitted, actually, Commissioner DiGirolamo did answer because they related to mail-in ballots. But there was one more question about the mail-in ballots, which is how can people check the status of their mail-in applications?
Commissioner Harvey, why don't you, you can handle that.
Yes, I did share just a bit ago. I shared a link to the Economic Resources Portal, and I'm going to share as soon as I, get into it. I'm going to share a link to another portal we have on the website, which is the election portal. And there are buttons there, and we kind of try to arrange the buttons in sort of order from like registering to vote all the way through to even canceling your absentee ballot. And there is a button on there where you can, that links you to the state site where you can check the status of your ballot. It is important, and you'll see an example on that site, or example on our page. It'll say your name, it'll say, Vale Garvin, blah, 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 address, whatever, and then it'll say status pending. Pending means that we've received it and that you're on the list. You're going to get one in the mail. And so, it'll go out to you when they go out. We did get about 150,000 of these applications. And, there are, obviously every other county in Pennsylvania is in the same boat as are some of the states around us. And so we know that there's, it's a tremendous amount of printing that has to be done and has to go out. It's a very complicated process, the printing and mailing. because we got to make sure that not every ballot's the same, because we have state representative races. People sometimes forget about those. So it's not that everybody in Bucks County only has, state candidates and federal candidates to vote for, so everybody can get the same ballot. We have, all the different state representatives who are up, and so they have to be specifically mailed to people. And there's actually referendums in a couple townships as well, so we have to make sure that they're going to the right people for that reason. So I'm going to put that in the chat function right now as soon as I can get to it.
Diane?
I'd also just like to throw in there, we will send you a link as soon as we can do it. Commissioner Harvey made an amazing video that's perfect in terms of how to do a mail-in ballot. There are steps involved. We don't want to forget not to send your ballot in without the secrecy envelope, because then it's naked and all of that. So we will get that, and if you could send that to everybody in the chamber, and if the chamber can send it out, that way we can make sure everybody really knows how to do those.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
And actually, since the video was just put this morning onto the election portal, it's under the absentee ballots button, and it's also in the FAQ section.
But we're still going to send it to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So there's another mail-in ballot, a couple more mail-in ballot questions. One, is there equipment that can be purchased and used to open and scan the ballots more efficiently?
Yes, and we've already bought it.
Great.
we've spent it's probably $750,000 on equipment. We have a mail sorter that's basically an industrial strength mail sorter that can sort tens of thousands of ballots, per day, and basically sorted by municipality. We also have 4 machines that help slice open the envelopes in a way that it's just the edges are done so that nothing inside's damaged. Unfortunately, the one piece of equipment that doesn't really seem to exist, or at least if it does, it's not something we can afford or anybody else can either, is the longest part of the process is still taking the contents out of the envelope, taking the folded ballot and flattening it. That is actually the piece that, the machines we have will slice the envelope and actually hold them open so that someone can reach in and pull out what's inside, but you still have to flatten out that piece of paper. We do have 10 high-speed scanners. Back in the primary, we had 2. That'll take, we're told, the capacity is 1,000 ballots an hour. But we're not really sure. The manufacturer's telling us it's 1,000 ballots an hour, but we're not. We'll wait and see. How accurate they are. So we have geared up, and we've hired about 15 more people for the Board of Elections. So we that would make it go faster.
Well, I know that Vail wants to say something, and Jean is going to close. We're really specific about ending on time, but there is one last question, and it is about mail-in voting again. What if you receive a vote by mail ballot, but decide instead to vote in person?
Yep, it's a very good question. Very good question. So there are 2 things you can do. When people go to vote in person, of course, you go and there's usually the book you sign into. You ask the people at the polls your name. They look up your name. You sign. That book is still going to be there. It's going to be slightly different. It's going to have a front half and a back half. The front half is people who did not apply for a mail-in ballot or absentee. The back half is people who did. So if you show up, if Jean Bedoni has applied for mail-in ballot, but she decides to vote in person anyway, if she shows up, her name will be in the back of the book. And what they'll basically ask her, did you, she might say, well, I never got mine in the mail, or, the dog ate it, something like that. In which case she'll be able to vote by provisional ballot. And that means it's a separate ballot that she can vote. It'll be held on to. And after the election, a few days later, what happens is there's sort of a rectification. Here are the people who voted by provisional ballot. We have to make sure they didn't mail in another ballot. So we do that first. If they did not mail in a mail-in ballot, and this is after the election, then we count the provisional. If they did mail in a mail-in ballot and they voted in person too, then maybe they weren't sure that it was going to get there in time. That's the more complicated answer. The simple answer is that if Jean Bedoni gets her mail-in ballot and decides that she wants to vote in person, if she brings the whole thing, you know, the ballot, the envelopes, if she brings it to her polling place and hands it over, it'll be spoiled and she can just vote as normal. No provisional, just a normal vote.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a
Thank
very,
you.
it's a very complicated process. And then, of course, we're starting out in a presidential election year. So it's made it more interesting.
Right.
Hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Vale, do you want to say a few words?
Jean, I'd really like to. Commissioner Marsaglia, Commissioner Harvey, Commissioner DiGirolamo, from the bottom of our hearts and on behalf of the business community and the citizens of Bucks County, I want to extend to you, thank you. Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you for the collaboration that shines through. Just appreciate it so much. And thank you for doing this excellent program this morning.
Thank
I'll
you
turn
for
it back
having
to
us,
you.
and everybody stay safe and mask up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good to see everybody.
All right.
Care.
Bye.
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 Bye.